Can the Union Budget 2025 fix larger real estate problems? A lot has been debated on the wish list of real estate stakeholders. I am raising this question from a different perspective today. Can Union Budget fix larger problems that is afflicting the business of Indian real estate? This question is more relevant than asking to what extent the Union Finance Minister will fulfill the wishes of the sector. This is because the real estate has largely been ignored, heavily taxed, and least considered in the budget of last few years. Irony is that for some strange reasons, the stakeholders who have a large wish list on the eve of Union Budget every year, they justify the sector being ignored in the post-budget analysis. Yes, there are few silver lines here and there in every Union Budget, but that hardly addresses the larger concerns of either the home buyers or the developers. Prior to the Union Budget, every industry is flooded with its set of demands and wish list, and real estate is no different. But then, real estate is not like any other industry. It's not an industry in the first place. And then, it is a complex business. And sooner the stakeholders admit it, the better it would be for both the demand and supply side as well as the policy makers. A fake narrative of booming business has hurt the sector more than anything else in the power corridors. Why should the finance minister offer incentives to a business that is self-certified as booming and contributing significantly to the GDP? It's always better to address the concern of the industries that are struggling. Add to it the lofty demands like granting industry status, etc., but always meant to be ignored. A few questions that need to be asked. Does real estate operate like an industry? Do builders sell products like any other matured industry? Is not fiscal mismanagement the biggest headline of the sector? Have not regulations like RERA failed to address the pain points of the buyers? As a matter of fact, there are three things that compound the problems of real estate. Number one, it's a business that sells before the product is even ready. Number two, localized nature of business with stakeholders of different geographies having different agenda. Number three, the opaque operations by the developers at large. The stakeholders of real estate have their own agenda and wish list, but then many of these demands are making rounds for the last few years. In order to understand the budget wish list, chances of finance minister's approval and overall impact on the sector, it is important to first understand the problems and then only think of viable solutions, if at all considered by the government. This is because many of the challenges of the sector are self-inflicted injuries. There are issues beyond what the Union Budget can even address. So what are the problems? Problem number one, shrinking middle class. Shrinking middle class is the real challenge before the Indian economy in general and real estate sector in particular. But then the stakeholders are either not talking about this or worse even, living in the denial with illusionary job market that is booming with higher salaries all around. The urban salaried middle class has historically been the major demand drivers of housing market in many economies, and India is no different. This set of buyers is increasingly phasing out of the housing market. Rising unemployment that is leading to decline in consumption and disposable income is the greatest challenge, and unless that is addressed, the real demand in the real estate sector would be missing. How can the Union Budget fix it? Creating more jobs and reigniting consumption that could lead to asset creation needs a surgery approach and definitely not a band-aid approach. A stimulus to the industries alone won't fix this problem. An incentive aligned with more job creation along with government spending could go a long way in creating more jobs that will eventually lead to housing demand. But the tone and direction of union budget in the last few years does not seem to suggest that the government is even thinking of on those lines. Problem number 2. Stagflation and challenges of survival. What is keeping the Indian middle class away from any high value purchase nowadays is the challenge to survive. Despite the denial of the government with selective data and statistics, there lies the stark reality of stagnant wage growth and hyperinflation, leading to lesser household savings and higher borrowing. The record gold mortgage by Indian household is a big red alert today. The inflation, most notably with the three critical areas of consumption, food inflation, medical inflation and education inflation, has pushed middle class on the edge. High cost of living for an average Indian is further compounded with the challenges of higher taxation. What can the union budget do to fix it? Well, tax rationalization is the need of the hour. The government can consider increase the personal income tax exemption up to the earning of 15 lakh rupees per year. GST rates on consumption items could also be rationalized. It absolutely makes no sense for an average Indian that there is 6 times more GST on essential food items than the luxury items like gold and diamond. Problem number 3. Oversupply and absorption of luxury housing. The oversupply and absorption of luxury housing has led to a very lopsided growth of Indian housing market in the last few years post the pandemic. The stakeholders are increasingly realizing the depth of the problem now. Luxury housing has reached to its plateau point and does not seem to drive the business 2025 onwards. What can the union budget do to fix it? Unfortunately, the finance minister can't regulate the supply of housing at the top of the pyramid. But what the union budget could do is to restructure the taxation and increase taxation with luxury housing and at the same time lower the tax or remove it with affordable housing. Problem number 4. A market that is focused on repeat buyers than first time buyers. There is no denying that investors drive the real estate market in this part of the world. The wish list of the developers hence seems to attract the repeat buyers and not the first time buyers. The developers in their collective consciousness have always advocated for tax incentives that could only tempt those who can afford to buy a house. But the ground reality is that the vast majority of the Indians can't afford to buy a house. Property market continues to be a game of top 10 cities and top 4% of Indian demography, while being out of the reach of the common man. The sector is not bothered to cater to mass housing, nor are they asking for any incentives that could make home buying easier for the lower end of the pyramid. How could more adjustments with the definition of affordable housing and increasing the price cap make homes more affordable? What the union budget can do to fix it? The government should bring back indexation benefits, keeping in mind the ground reality of distress sale in many cases. This would give confidence to the buyers who are on the edge and are apprehensive that property sales in the wake of any emergency would be a double burden. Loss of distress sale as well as the capital gain tax. The buyers of affordable housing need to be subsidized with more incentives like increase in the tax deduction limit on home loan interest from 2 lakh rupees to 4 lakh rupees under section 24 of Income Tax Act. Reinstating the credit-linked subsidy scheme could also help the affordable home buyers. Further, a revision of the current deduction limit from 1.5 lakh to 5 lakh under Section 80C could also be considered to ease home ownership experience. There is demand for stamp duty cut as well, but then that is a state subject. So asking finance minister to announce it in the union budget does not make sense. Problem number 5, higher input cost of property. Property prices are increasingly moving northwards due to higher input cost. Higher input cost of construction material, higher taxation and higher cost of capital is all leading to affordability curve going beyond what market can absorb. What can the union budget do to fix it? The union budget can take measures to rationalize GST on raw materials. GST on under construction properties could be done with. Adjustments to input tax credit would also reduce the cost burden on developers. Green developments could be incentivized. Single window clearance would marginally reduce the overall project cost. The government can also introduce incentives to attract both domestic and foreign investments. Problem number 6, no focus on long-term sustainable urbanization. Indian real estate with potential to contribute significantly to the GDP is still all about the top 10 cities. There is no blueprint to create more functional cities. No one knows what happened with the plan to create 100 smart cities. The developers have no incentive to move to tier 2 and 3 cities, while the home buyers have no job or economic activity to shift. Issues like rental housing and Model Tenancy Act have to move forward beyond the lip service of high-flying announcements that are stuck up with execution logjam. What can the union budget do to fix it? Along with infrastructure development, what the finance minister can do is to offer incentives to industries, developers and affordable home buyers for shifting base to tier 2 and 3 cities. Tax holiday for businesses and tax benefits to home buyers can lead to sustainable development of India's quest for urbanization. These are the problems and possible solutions for the union budget to make housing for all a reality in the true sense of the term. These measures could also address the larger concerns of India's urbanization. The even bigger question is whether these issues figure in the top priority areas of the government. Well, if wishes were horses, I rest my case.